Hi, thanks for joining the conversation around storage capacity enforcement. In this playbook, we're going to discuss storage capacity enforcement for the Microsoft Dataverse. The Microsoft Dataverse is used with a bulk majority of our Dynamics 365 apps and Power Apps that use a database within their environment. This conversation does not include Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. In this playbook, we want customers to be able to identify their current capacity entitlements and usage, create a plan to understand their storage needs, and how to manage their capacity to prevent enforcements from happening. This conversation is geared towards our partners that service our customers, and ultimately, the customers using the Microsoft Dataverse. For our customers, this conversation is not only applicable to the technical teams, but also with the business teams. The technical team will help manage and plan storage needs, but the business team is needed in case additional storage procurement is necessary. Most of the slides are tagged in the top right corner to emphasize the targeted customer teams, business, technical, or both. We will help you understand storage capacity entitlements, what the effects are for going over your storage entitlements in terms of enforcements, and then we help with creating a plan to effectively understand storage needs and ways to prevent capacity overage. This playbook is broken up into 3 chapters: Initiate, Explore, and Implement. In the Initiate chapter, we lay the foundation of what storage capacity is, how you calculate your storage entitlements, and what happens if you go over your entitlements. In the Explore chapter, we help you understand where to review your current storage capacity and consumption, and to start developing a plan to identify what your storage needs may be. Lastly, within the Implement chapter, we take the knowledge from the previous chapters to help maintain storage consumption. Let's go ahead and get started with this discussion in the Initiate chapter. The first thing we need to do is understand what storage capacity really is. Currently, the Microsoft Dataverse has 2 different storage models. The first model we will talk about is Legacy. In this model, all of your storage usage and entitlement is rolled up into one storage type. The second model is the New model. You can see that this has 3 different types of capacities, each with their own usage and entitlements. We have database, file, and log. The storage model you have is defined by the license at the time you procured the service. Any customers who are in the legacy model will eventually move to the new model at their next EA renewal. Customers looking to move from legacy to the new storage model will have to wait until their EA anniversary or renewal. Talk with your Microsoft sales team representative to get more information. You can see that there are many benefits from the legacy model to the new model. Let's just quickly cover a couple of these benefits. One of the common scenarios that customers had been doing was to move file storage from Microsoft Dataverse to Azure Blob Storage. We now have that implemented and baked into the product. Customers also get additional default capacity entitlements, as well as full user entitlements. Let's take a deeper look into entitlements. Let's start off with legacy model entitlements. Entitlements are calculated at a tenant level. When you purchase a qualifying Power Platform license, that tenant receives 10 gigs of storage. After 20 fully licensed enterprise users, the tenant would receive another 5 gigs of storage entitlement. Customers on the legacy model should be purchasing environment add-ons for each environment they have within their tenant. Now, if we compare this with the new model, since there are 3 different capacity types, there's a default allocation for each of those types. Again, to receive the default entitlements, you must have purchased a qualifying Power Platform license. You'll also notice that each licensed user receives additional storage entitlements. Lastly, customers are free to create as many environments as long as they have the capacity to do so without having to purchase additional environment add-ons. To understand which licenses qualify for default capacity and the associated user entitlements, review the Power Apps and Dynamics 365 licensing guides, or talk with your Microsoft sales team to get more information. To get more insight into your capacity entitlements, you'll use the Power Platform Admin Center. Within the Power Platform Admin Center, you go into Resources, Capacity, and within the Summary tab, it gives you more details about your capacity entitlements. In this screenshot, you can see that this tenant had 10 gigabytes of database capacity. The user licenses gave another 122.75 gigabytes of entitlement. Lastly, another 500 gigabytes of database capacity add-ons were purchased. Now that we understand the storage models and how the entitlements are calculated, it's important that we cover what capacity overage is and the enforcement that goes along with the overages. Capacity overage is when you consume more storage than your entitlements. For customers on the legacy model, as you see in the top right screenshot, once you're over your entitlement, you will face enforcement. For customers on the new model, because you are over capacity for one storage type, doesn't mean that you will face enforcement. Let's take a look at that a little further. Again, this is only relevant to customers on the new storage model. If a tenant is over on file capacity, that capacity can be covered by available log or database capacity. If there is deficiency in log storage and you have enough database capacity, then you wouldn't see enforcement. However, once you are deficient in database, you're always deficient and you would see enforcement. Let's double click into this with some scenarios. Let's look at the first scenario here on the left. As you can see, it shows that we are 10 gigs over in database usage. As we talked about in the previous slide, once we are deficient in database capacity, we are always deficient. In the second scenario, the example is that we are 10 gigs over in log usage and have 5 gigs available in database storage. We would still be deficient in this case because we can use 5 gigs of our database capacity, but we'd still need another 5 gigs of either database or log capacity. The third scenario shows that there is 90 gigs over in file storage, and if we pull the other two storage types together, we would be able to get another 85 gigs of available storage. However, we would still be deficient by 5 gigs. The last scenario is the most common one, where we see the customer is over in log storage, and that overage is handled by database availability. In this case, where we are not deficient, we would not see any capacity enforcement happening. Be aware that, in this case, database capacity would be 10 gigs less than what was shown in the Power Platform Admin Center. So if we were to consume another 20 gigs of database storage, then we would be deficient by 10 gigs of log storage. Allocations are not converted from one type to another, nor does a customer have to manually define allocations from one storage type to another. The platform does the calculations automatically. In each scenario where there was storage deficiency, capacity enforcement would happen. We have had some form of capacity enforcement for some time now. In order to create a new database, you've had to have 1 gig available of database storage. As of August 2020, there are 2 more admin operations that are affected once a tenant is deficient in capacity. If a tenant is over capacity, admins will not be able to copy and restore an environment. This goes for restoring a full or minimal copy. It's important to know that enforcement will not affect a customer's ability to create backups at this time. So at this point, you should have a good understanding of what storage capacity is, how entitlements are calculated, what capacity overage is, and the enforcement that will happen if you're deficient in capacity. Let's go deeper and explore storage consumption and environment planning. It's extremely important that customers are continuously reviewing their storage consumption to help identify abnormal or unplanned growth and to ensure their current consumption is below the entitlements. In order to understand your current capacity consumption, we need to go back to the Power Platform Admin Center. Within the Power Platform Admin Center, we can look at the storage capacity for an entire tenant and see the consumption of each environment based on storage type. Remember, entitlements are at a tenant level, so it's the sum of all the environments that determines our current consumption. Let's take a moment and discuss what is in each storage type of the new model. Within File, you can see that this will include all your attachments, notes, and the analytical data generated from the Insights apps, such as Customer Service Hub or Sales Insights. Looking at log storage, this is going to be primarily the audit transactions for a production instance. It is important to know that dev work in lower environments could impact the storage type if plug and trace had been left enabled or the logs are not cleaned up. Lastly is the database storage, which is everything else. Take note that other database optimizations, such as indexes, are included in the usage of database storage. Looking into the environment usage report, get the ability to see the top table usage for each of the storage types. In addition, for database storage, you have the ability to download all tables and indexes to further understand what consists of your database usage. As we continue on in the Explore chapter, it's vital that you start including storage as part of your application lifecycle management practices. Environment planning is extremely important when you start determining your storage needs. Most customers create environments on the fly, not thinking of the impact that it has on their storage entitlements. Doing so creates opportunities for them to go over their entitlements, which will cause them to face enforcement. These enforcements could limit their ability to deliver on their CI/CD strategy. As such, environment planning should be defined based on your ALM requirements. It's not only important to know how many environments you need as part of your ALM strategy, but what data should be in those environments. The most common reason customers go over their storage entitlements is that they are copying and restoring environments that contains a lot of data into environments that don't really need it. You should really determine what data do I need to complete this part of my ALM phase. For instance, development environments really only need to have a sample set of data to test the new feature or functionality. Ideally, the dev team that is creating the new feature is also creating tests to validate those new features. Part of that should also include the data needed to validate those tests. QA environments should have similar data sets to dev, but the data requirements will expand just a little further. For instance, if the dev team created a new add-on feature that integrates with a current business process, then there should be enough data to ensure that the quality assurance process can be completed end-to-end. For user testing, the requirements are going to be a bit different. Users may need to work with data they own or their team owns. They may need to test with data from another business unit. In these types of cases, having a near production-like dataset is important because they need to validate many scenarios that may get missed during the lower stages. You should also take into consideration regulatory constraints about what data you use and where. As an example, GDPR does not allow you to use production data for development testing. Restoring a production database for your dev environments should not be done with organizations that work with European Union customers. Here's an example of what an environment plan may look like taking into consideration a company's application lifecycle management or ALM strategy. You can see that there are 5 different cycles: dev, quality assurance or QA, UAT or user acceptance testing, pre-prod, and production. When we look at dev, you see that there are 3 different environments with minimal data. Dev environments, as mentioned before, should have minimal data to test the new or updated feature that is being developed. In this scenario, there are 2 different dev teams working on a single solution, but developing different features. Once they are done with the dev work, they will package their changes into a single solution to roll out to the next phase. In QA, we have tests running on our current production customizations, as well as customizations we are rolling out from dev. We also have an environment that is being used for integration testing. Similar to QA, we have a prod and dev environment within our UAT phase. Next, in our pre-prod phase, we have 2 different environments. We have one for user training, where users will learn to use the new features being rolled out. Once all the validations are complete, we move the solution into our staging environment in preparation for release into production. This example has rough estimates of the environment size. This could and should change regularly as you continue to validate what is needed for each phase. As you can see, having this level of planning changes our thought process on storage. Instead of thinking of, I get X entitlement and will create environments until I can't create them any longer, you become more pointed with your storage needs. If this customer only had an entitlement of 100 gigabytes of database storage, by going through this exercise, they would already know that they were going to need to purchase more storage to accommodate their ALM strategy. It also helps customers assess, are these environments needed? For example, are we getting the expected value out of having a UAT prod environment? If not, should we recoup that allocation by releasing that environment? Again, this model should be regularly updated, accounting for growth and any additional features being added or integrations being introduced. As we continue on with the Explore discussion, you should clearly understand what data do you need to retain your environments. Data within the Microsoft Dataverse, which is used by most Dynamics 365 apps and some Power Apps, should have some life expectancy, similar to a user having a finite mailbox size. They must choose what data is important to keep within their mailbox, what data is important for a little while, and what data is really not important at all. Not all data is created equal, and not all data is valuable after a certain period of time. You need to truly understand what data do you need for regulatory, contractual, or analytical purposes, and where that data should live. Each entity and non-entity table should have its own policy. An account is a master record, so we know we should keep those indefinitely. However, contacts may no longer be valid at a company we work with. Is it important that we keep every contact in Dynamics, or can we remove some? Customers come and go, and so if they have gone, should we be keeping their data forever? This really needs to be done with each of the storage types and the data within those types. When defining data retention policy, it helps to classify your data. Data classification gives you a ground set of policies which can be revised further. While there are different classifications, try to break your classifications into 3 types: master, operational, and transactional. Typically, master data is required for your operational and transactional data. For instance, in a lot of CRM applications, account is the primary record which all other records flow to in one way or another. Typically, you'll maintain master data for the longest period of time. Operational data is the engagements you have with the master data. It's the opportunities that are generated or the cases that get created. Lastly, we have transactional data, which are the actual interactions or activities we have with the master and or operational data. Storing data within Microsoft Dataverse gives the data structure and simplifies relational data. This is the importance of having a common data model. Once you have a retention policy defined, it's important that you store or archive data in the proper storage repositories while maintaining that common data model. Data within the Microsoft Dataverse should really be for everyday use. Data that we need to keep for regulatory or contractual reasons could be offloaded into a different storage model to help reduce overall cost. Similar with data that we use for reporting purposes. At the current time of this recording, Microsoft does not have a first-party archival solution. However, Microsoft is committed to getting a solution to help our customers accomplish this task. Until a solution is available from Microsoft, there are a number of third-party solutions that can help you get data out of the Microsoft Dataverse and into another repository. Ensure that you use an established solution that understands the design and structure of the Microsoft Dataverse. For Dynamics 365 apps using the Microsoft Dataverse, there are settings that can be modified or tuned to help prevent unnecessary storage growth. This list is not an all-encompassing list for all Dynamics 365 apps. These are common Dynamics 365 settings that applies to all Dynamics 365 apps. Ensure a user's personal options are not creating emails that shouldn't exist within Dynamics 365. To help prevent excessive file storage growth, consider limiting the file size of files being added to Microsoft Dataverse. Create very clear audit requirements for each of your entities. Understand if you really need to audit something or not. Do you need to audit every field change, or can you refine this further to only audit certain important fields like first and last name, account name, etc.? Also, consider disabling auditing on any environment that is not your production environment. Asynchronous workflows and plugins are often forgot about. Ensuring the logs are automatically removed after they are successful prevents having to do massive data cleanups afterwards. Now that we have laid a foundation in exploring your storage usage, determining what data is needed, and what to do with data when we no longer need it in the Microsoft Dataverse, we should be putting together a storage plan. It all starts with reduce. In a lot of cases, there are environments that were created for a single purpose and never removed. There are environments that have data in it that it really doesn't need. Determine what you can do to reduce your existing capacity based on the details we previously talked about. Once you identified how and what you're going to reduce, it's important that you prevent your storage consumption from growing uncontrollably. We'll talk about different options for maintaining environments as part of our next chapter, Implement. Lastly, you really should start to think of your storage requirements proactively. It's common for a customer to continue to use Dynamics 365 apps and not think about the storage needs now and for the future. Often, customers will purchase storage for their current usage without thinking about what their yearly growth may be. Try and plan on what you expect your growth to be to ensure you don't run out of storage capacity throughout the year. Here's an example of a plan that was developed for a customer. There's a lot of data here, but let me highlight a few things. For this conversation, we are simply going to look at the customer's database storage entitlement and usage. First, this customer had an entitlement of 181 gigabytes of their database storage. Next, their current database usage was over 3 terabytes. When we started going through their existing environments, we were able to remove or clear data on environments that consumed 2.3 terabytes of their 3 terabytes in usage. By defining their storage needs as it relates to their ALM strategy, we were able to understand what was needed and what was not. We also uncovered patterns of restoring production environments into lower environments where production data was not needed. Lastly, we were able to clearly see that their current production environment was already more than their actual entitlement. By doing a detailed plan like this, it helps understand if the current entitlement is enough for our current usage and if there are things that we can do to reduce consumption. Let's dive into our final chapter where we start to implement some of the plans we put together. Based on our plan to reduce the current consumption, how do we accomplish these goals? First is to clean up and maintain the existing environments within Power Platform Admin Center. Are there environments you no longer need? If so, you should delete these environments. Are there environments you need to keep, but you don't need all of the data? If so, then reset the environment and redeploy your customizations. These efforts to reduce your current consumption will show as an instant reduction in consumption within the Power Platform Admin Center. There are going to be environments that you're going to need to keep, but you may not need all the data within those environments. Creating bulk delete jobs within Dynamics 365 will help clean up that data within the environment. This is an asynchronous job and does take time to complete. Entities with more relationships with more records will take even more time to complete due to the cascading behavior of those relationships. Here are some good suggestions to help your initial cleanup of these storage types. Once you have reduced your current consumption, it's important that you maintain your storage consumption. Maintaining storage is much easier than having to do drastic reduction efforts. The main tool to maintain data within an environment is through recurring bulk delete jobs. These run periodically to clean up the data within an environment. These should be based on your retention policies you created. Continuously monitor your storage growth within the Power Platform Admin Center. This will help you identify if there's any unexpected storage growth. The Power Platform Admin Center only maintains the history for the last 30 days, so consider downloading the results and sourcing that data into another repository. This will allow you to monitor your growth for longer durations. If you have found that you simply need more storage entitlement, you have the ability to purchase more capacity add-ons. If you have someone managing your licensing, such as a partner or a Microsoft sales rep, reach out to them to help you procure additional capacity add-ons. You should know what you need based on your current usage and the plan you developed previously. If you don't have someone managing your licensing, you can purchase additional capacity via the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Within the appendix, we have some additional helpful resources and information. Many attempts were made to ensure customers were notified of the additional storage enforcements that happened in August of 2020. Ensure you're paying attention and subscribing to the Message Center notifications. This is the primary tool used by the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 teams to notify of upcoming changes. Additional documentation for storage capacity entitlements can be found within Microsoft Docs. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about storage capacity and enforcement.